Okay, very warm welcome to our panel this afternoon. Time is running, so it's getting late and you all heard a lot of information and a lot of content today. So thank you for joining for this panel discussion this afternoon. My name is Anna Rodewald. I'm co-founder at Green Room Voice. We are a communication agency taking care that sustainability topics are communicatable. And we are running the sustainability launch in Hall C2. And today I have the pleasure to have two panelists here with me talking on a topic which is not that often seen here at the performance days. If we run around here on the booths, we see a lot of topics on recycling, on material, on science and everything. So a lot of aspects of sustainability. But there's one topic which is very relevant for all of us, doesn't matter, we are suppliers, brands, yarn spinners and so on. That is the social part of sustainability in our supply chains. And for that reason, I'm very happy to have two panelists here with us showcasing project which was successfully carried out in Vietnam in the supply chain. And as we all know, sustainability is a team sport. That's why I'm happy to have somebody here coming from a brand and in collaboration with the service provider. So please welcome with me Joshua from Atlat and Marco from Deutscher Sport. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Anna.
Thanks. Could you tell us a bit on what the project was about? How did it come? How did you both come together? How did it showed up?
Okay, if I could take the question?
Yeah.
So we both got to know each other back in 2020 digitally, and I approached Marco online, and the first step of our collaboration was really still an MVP, a minimum viable product for a grievance mechanism. 2 years later, we rolled it out as a pilot project in one factory in Vietnam. And 2 years after that, we increased the scope in the bigger project that we want to talk about today also. Also co-funded by the Textilbündnis and GIZ with another brand on board, and rolled out a grievance mechanism to really engage workers in the supply chain. I think that's a bit of the timeline. Anything to add?
Yeah, maybe. I think the interesting part is how we actually got to know each other, because your message on LinkedIn was kind of, I just read it today because I just remember that message, and it was during the COVID times, and we had just finalized our internal strategy on how we want to work with our supply chains, how we developed an tier 2, so lower tier monitoring system, and we were really thinking about how we're going to do that and how we're going to work with people in the supply chain. And just at that moment, you sent us a message. Hey, I'm Joshua. I think you back then you didn't call yourself Atlat. You were called True Colors.
Yeah, that was the working title. But then we found out the SEO was really bad, because if you Google True Colors, you end up with a song of Cyndi Lauper.
Yeah, okay. Then I really liked your request. It was short, and I thought, hey, that might be something we are actually looking for. And then I asked you, what's it all about? Can you explain a bit more? And then you explained it, and then we took it on from there. We had the first online meetings, and we were quite impressed by the software and by the solution you provided. And but it was also not ready yet,
Not at all.
So kind of co-development also for the whole project. And
it was a good moment. I mean, it was a little startup, and they were like introducing themselves as techie nerds, and who are socially involved, engaged, and want to change things and want to make things better. And this is actually what I really liked. And so that's how that cooperation started, that successful cooperation.
Exactly.
And you were looking into the supply chain beyond tier 1, as we have in our title, so looking into tier 2, tier 3, which are often not looked at that deeply. So how did you do that? How did you come in contact with all the partners?
Yeah, I mean, I'm working in sustainability and social compliance since, I don't know, 20 years almost. so a very long time. And even until that moment, the monitoring was mainly focusing on tier 1. Direct suppliers, of course, you have direct influence. You pay the money, you buy products, you can go to the factories, send your developers, and sure, I mean, there's a close connection, but when you want to go further down the supply chain, then it gets interesting. I mean, for fabrics, hey, we see that kind of fair was always there. You were somehow connected to your fabric suppliers, but when it comes to like sewing threads, who ever visited a sewing thread factory in Vietnam? How many brands did that before? And how many brands visited, for example, a little button supplier or, I don't know, zippers? Yeah, we usually use larger factories, but we had many factories because our products use many little bits and pieces from different suppliers, foam suppliers, for example. A lot of different foams are coming from not many suppliers, but suppliers that are not in focus of social compliance, that are not in focus of social trainings, or that are regularly visited by brands. And that was actually the blind spot. And we thought that might be an interesting field we should work in with Atlat.
Yeah, and I think the basis for this project was really that you already have an overview and a long-standing collaboration with your tier 1 supplier in Vietnam, which was also very helpful to get then in contact with the tier 2 suppliers, right? And also in order to reach out, of course, what we provide is services, tools. They are not limited in terms of which tier they are introduced at. But what was really helpful was also the connection on the ground. We had a local NGO supporting us. I think we will talk about this also probably more later, but I think this was also really crucial. The name of the NGO CDI, I really recommend to work with them because they really helped connect also on a humane level with the factories and the factory management.
And why did you choose Vietnam? There are so many other production countries in our industry which are very well used and well known.
I think, Marco, this is also yours to answer because this came from you.
Yeah, I mean, the whole project that was finally implemented, so the system of having a complaint mechanism in lower tiers in Vietnam originated from it's our main sourcing country. So we have a large supplier. We mainly buy almost all our products there, most of our products, and that also means the surrounding supply chain over there is just in Vietnam. So close connection.
And you mentioned you worked with a local NGO, and you also integrated the local management teams. How did you reach out to the local management teams? How did you get them on board? As you mentioned, there is no direct business connection often. How did you manage that? Because there might be a lot of partners here thinking on, hey, where do I start?
Maybe that was somehow to say the second step. The first step was to really develop the whole project, and to develop. Or can we talk about that a bit later? Because I think that requires a little bit the information for better understanding. We actually got the information or the direct contacts from our main supplier, from Duke, and they had a close connection with all those suppliers, and they send out request emails if they want to join a training, if they would be prepared to join a 1-year project with complaints, implementing a complaint system, receiving trainings on internal complaints mechanisms, so receiving trainings for workers, for worker empowerment, so direct improvement of how do I solve complaints, how do I raise complaints, what are even my rights, I mean, that's something basic. Workers need to understand. They first need to be trained, understand what would be their rights, and then they would be given a voice and the possibility to raise their concerns if they have any. And interesting was that some suppliers were, hesitant, but most of the suppliers were really happy to get this kind of attention from a brand, because for example, I mentioned the sewing thread supplier. It was the first time a brand ever visited them. And they produce sewing threads for many backpack manufacturers and factories. And they were like, the brand never was interested in what we are doing and what our people are doing. And they were really happy receiving these trainings and to implement then later on the system, right?
Yeah, sure. Maybe it also helps to explain a bit of the structure of the project, who was all involved. So Deuter, of course, as a brand, but also Autovox as a brand was involved. Then we had the Partnership for Sustainable Textiles, or Textilbündnis in Germany, who also co-funded parts of the project, especially the part with a local NGO, which is called CDI, who carried out trainings also in the facilities. And we also had Care Germany as a consulting partner, which is also an international NGO. And to your question, which was about how we got in contact with the lower tier suppliers once the introduction was made, and also communicating with them. Of course, there were some doubts and some worries. And we as Atlas, as the service provider for the grievance mechanism, we have some communication material, right, on no, this is not about controlling you, trying to take the worries of the production management also away. But what was really also helpful to have this impartial NGO as CDI also translating this not only language-wise, but also in terms of translating it, meeting them at a different point. This is really about action-oriented improvement in the factory. And it's not about control. You can rather see it also from the brand perspective as an investment in your factory, right? So this is all about framing. And an additional point about the framing, which I want to mention, I think which was really relevant for the factories, is that we didn't say our service is the ultimate goal, that this needs to be used. No, we have in scope, the internal mechanism needs to be strengthened, right? This was the goal of the trainings that we conducted as well, strengthening of internal mechanisms, and then our service as a backup. And I think this is also something that convinced factory management, this interplay of internal and external. Yeah.
Okay. So different partners had different roles, and the help of the local NGOs, did they spread out? How did they help to spread out the message in the community of the suppliers, or also did they spread it out into to other suppliers, or was it just the Deuter supply chain?
Yeah, so the focus were the participating factories, which are in the Deuter and Autovox supply chain, some overlapping, some non. overlapping, and the trainers from the NGO CDI, they conducted 6 training sessions, and now let me quickly think what they were. So first training session was on internal mechanism and social dialogue. Then there was a training session on the external mechanism, which is provided by us. So this means if the internal grievance mechanism doesn't seem trustworthy, or you try to explain as a worker your problem, then you reach out via our digital tool. Then there was a training session on labor law. In Vietnam, there was a training session also on GBV, or gender-based violence, and sexual harassment prevention. And of course, there was also a follow-up session at the end of the project to recapitulate what has been learned, and also to get new feedback in. And from the training organization point of view, I think we, for our part, for the service provider, we also engaged with the training organization, of course, and explained everything, how it works. We have training materials for the NGO, so they can then carry out the training in the factories. And another part of the training, of course, some trainings were only for the workers. Some were also for the production management, and some were even together. For example, on social dialogue, the training was in combination with workers and with factory management. So some concerns were already raised there, right? And I think this was a really fruitful participation also. And an additional thing that I want to mention here is in coordination of these trainings. Before we started, we did a survey, so a baseline survey to find out where the factories stand, right? And the trainings have really been also customized a bit to the factory needs with what came out of this baseline survey. And I think this was also really helpful, so that it was also seen as beneficial to participate in these trainings, right?
And you're talking about factories. How many factories have been part of the project?
9.
Yeah, nine factories, from small to big. I think the smallest factory was with like 20 workers and the management, and the largest one is like 500 workers. I think something like this. So quite a different setting in each factory. So the training was that diverse. And I mean, the good thing is we got quite an extensive funding for that project. And that gave us the possibility also to invest some time into the training, setting up the trainings, and also to individualize them. But also Atlat supported a lot by implementing that kind of questionnaires, online questionnaires, which could be easily distributed among workers and among the factory management. And that really helped to set up the project. But maybe we also need to go back a little bit. This big project and the big funding originated from a pilot we made in the beginning. We started off implementing the Atlat complaint system in a printing facility with approximately 40 to 50 workers, also in Vietnam. And we provided training ourselves. We provided information videos, we provided posters with explanations, but nobody used the system. And nobody really understood what it's all about. And that made us realize, hey, using a system will never solve any issues. And nobody would ever call a number they don't know. There's no trust. I mean, if you change position and think of the worker who might experience harassment or might experience discrimination, he would not be open to call some kind of telephone number to raise his voice and talk about his problems or her problems. And that was the crucial thing we realized. And then we thought, okay, we need to apply for for that funding to increase that project and see if with extension the training and understanding of the workers' rights in the supply chains, we might get a different result then. And yeah.
So it's about trust.
It's all about trust, definitely, yeah. It's if you want to raise complaints, you need to feel safe.
I think one thing I also want to mention, as Marco just explained, it's really, we've been learning alongside with each other, which is so beautiful about this project as well. And we then also did a study with a market research agency in Vietnam before the bigger project started, still in the pilot phase. And one thing I just want to point out, what we learned from that study, like doing usability testings basically on the grievance mechanism and on the communication material. And what we learned is that we do not use the Vietnamese word for complaint or grievance anymore, but rather the Vietnamese words for feedback, to have it more inviting and more culturally appropriate, so people don't feel appalled by the strong wording. And I think this is really what is happening if you do a project for this time, that it gets better also, the service. And you need to so I really learned a lot, and I think that's exactly what improved also the participation rates. Yeah,
that's a very interesting example. That small word can help to build trust, to have the whole project being successful. So that's a really nice example. I like that a lot. So you build up the trust with the workers, you engage the management. Did you saw any differences between the big and the small factories? So 50 people versus whatever, few thousand. Is there a difficulty for one or the other workers to speak up, or is it after training more or less the same?
Yeah, it's definitely not the same. I mean, Joshua talked about the baseline assessment. So first we checked where are the factories today? Do they have a functional internal grievance mechanism? Do they have it? Yes, no. Larger factories tend to have some kind of HR person, tend to have like proper processes, a grievance box, and somebody who's taking care of that. Small companies are like family businesses. You know, everybody knows each other, and there's not a documented process for filing in complaints. You just go to your boss and say, hey, either you can go to your boss and say, hey, I'm not happy, and he's solving your problem, or he's not solving your problem, and you're leaving the company, or not. You know, that's definitely completely different. But in terms of cooperation, or in terms of effectiveness of a training, always depending on the boss. So to say, the CEO of the company, or the boss of the company, if they were involved and they thought, hey, that might be beneficial for my company, then they would push their workers to join the trainings, and also told them, hey, be happy, feel safe. You can file your complaints. I will not kick you out, you know. And this is what we really learned. We had a very big fabric supplier, and they were not really interested. They had some trainings before, in a different kind of trainings, and he was not supporting that. And in the end of the day, the whole training was not really effective. And there's big difference, yeah. And you need to convince them in the beginning, but they also need to be really convinced themselves that they're doing something, not just for ticking a box, but really for implementing systems and improvements in their own companies.
So something very individual.
Yeah. May I add something to that? Just from my perspective, we had the chance to also visit some of the factories end of last year, which was basically at the end of the project. And from my perception with the smaller factories, talking to the factory management, I had really the sense of gratitude, like as a feeling of recognition. Oh, you're taking human rights, workers' rights in our factory serious, which I didn't. I had much more with the smaller factories, this sense of gratitude. And what is also interesting in the smaller factories, in the end line assessment, so the survey at the end of the project, basically, of the project period, more of the workers said that they feel it's beneficial that they can complain anonymously, right? Which makes total sense. A smaller factory, everybody knows everyone, which is so nice. And about some problems, it's maybe really easy to talk. And some problems you rather want an anonymous backup mechanism to speak up about, I don't know, topics like harassment maybe, right?
So that's also the area where your digital tool helps, Rasha. So Digital by Atlat. Can you tell us a bit more about how that helps to get this anonymity and how to get the trust of the workers to use the system?
Yeah. Several aspects to that. So we've been talking about grievance mechanism a lot. So this is one pillar of what we offer. We call it also grievance system. Then another pillar is the surveys that we've been talking about also, and also services around that, like training documentation. Let me get into a bit more detail what grievance system means. So on the one hand side, you have, of course, the worker perspective, where workers want to report problems, grievances. And there we have digital grievance channels, which are essentially no additional apps that need to be downloaded, because who wants to download an additional app nowadays? But they are really meeting the workers where they are already, in messaging apps, or also on our website, or also on IVR. And on the other hand side, we have the platform, which is not for the workers, but for example, for brands such as Deuter, to collaborate, for example, also with the factory management in the remediation of the issues, and have a guided process, step-by-step guidance, how to remediate, and also to report these issues. So it's really a data-driven approach to make the reporting of this social sustainability easier. This is a grievance system, right? This is the core of what we offer. But then again, also the surveys come in very helpful, because from the surveys to baseline, as well as the endline survey, we had very different and also insightful findings that we wouldn't have gotten only from the grievances, right? You learn also a lot from the workers' perspective through these surveys. And then other additional tools like this training documentation, it's came up within the project. Once again, a learning that came up in the project with the NGO after each training, really to have handy documentation, what happened in the training, sort of also quality management, what issues arose. Do you have some pictures? Do you have the consent forms? So really, also for you as a brand, I guess, to have some oversight, right, of what happened in these trainings. This is the services part. And I think what I also want to highlight, all of it is, of course, data-driven, reportings-driven. So you can also find all the necessary insights on one need page, which make it really easy for CSR managers, compliance managers to write their reports, because CSR managers spend a lot of time writing reports, but usually they would much rather work on also hands-on things. So we really want to do this as efficient as possible for you. Yeah.
And after a complaint has been handled by the system, what happens then? Is it something which is then filed up, or would there some kind of continuous action on it? How do you handle that?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Actually, the system is not really handling. It's a documentation, and it helps translation. So it's like a chat. The worker can file with their local language, and it's going to be translated. We, as a CSR manager, we get it translated into English. But solving the problem is then something the system is not doing for us. There's some kind of guidance inside, but in the end of the day, we need to contact the factory, see the root cause for the complaint. You know, for simple example, if the drinking water has an issue. Complaint comes in and says, okay, the drinking water provided in the factory tastes crazy or not good, or I think it's not healthy. Then we can reach out to the factory management and inform them that we have come to know that the drinking water is not good. If they can provide a test, then they would provide a test, and then case closed. Something like this, like this. So it's like a three-step approach. You need to check the complaint if it's relevant or not. Then you need to find a solution together with the factory management and implement the improvement. And then finally reach out to the complainant if it really has been solved, the issue. And so far in the cases we had complaints, we were able to solve the issues. But there were not many complaints, so it's still running the project. And let's see what comes in.
Yeah, and I think what is also important to mention that, as you said, what happens after a complaint is closed. So the complainant, so the worker, even if they complain anonymously, they can be reached by you, right? Via chat, and this is via an alphanumeric code, right? And so they can log on to their case and answer questions or also ask questions. And ideally, if you created a corrective action plan in our platform, you say, okay, we have done all our actions, then you contact the worker again and ask, okay, did this really happen, right? Are you satisfied with what happened? And I think this is also the most important information, because who can say better if it works than the person who initially brought the case into consciousness, right?
Okay, so even if the project is still running, is there any key results, key results you already have, which you can share?
Right. Let
Learnings.
Me quickly. I have a couple. I just don't want to forget any. I think definitely what I want to start with is the collaboration, because I think in this bigger project, especially, we learned how important it is also to have different perspectives, and I think also the collaboration with I want to point out the collaboration with the NGO, because it was super helpful to actually reach the workers and also the factory management. Then I think generally in tier 2 there is a big void. Sometimes you hear grievance mechanisms. Oh, factories already have so many grievance mechanisms. There are hundreds of posters. This isn't the case in a deeper supply chain, right? Let this once and for all, this rumor be wiped out of your memory, because it's not the case in the deeper supply chain. We've seen that, and there is still a void of rights holder accessibility to grievance mechanisms in the deeper supply chain. Then also regarding the training design, I think it was so super helpful, of course, to have the local NGO, once again, local expertise, but also to have the survey-backed, the insight-backed coordination of these trainings, right? We did the baseline survey in advance of organizing these trainings. So the trainings were really custom to the factory, and I think this is really something that is also key learning. This made the trainings so much better for the factories. Then we already talked about management. The management engagement is so crucial. I would say this is also a key learning. If the management is not on board, it doesn't work. Really try to get them on board in order to have a successful worker voice project. And then I would mention again this sort of human-centric design of our service, that we tested it in advance of rolling it out. The example I gave with this simple example, how is complaint translated into Vietnamese having such an important role, but also not only the language, but also the visual language, how we introduced communicated flyers and posters, right? And what I also want to mention is it needs a cultural shift, right? This is also a key learning. And what does it mean? Grievance mechanisms are not only about legal issues, right? But really have it as a pragmatic way of solving problems on the one hand side, but also addressing risk on the other hand side. And this cultural shift needs dialogue with the suppliers. And I think you have the perfect base for that because you have such a long-term partnerships with these suppliers, right? And this is necessary really to also to have this long breath in order to enable this cultural shift also. So grievance mechanism needs a bit of time also to work, right? Then, okay, one more point I wanted to mention is also the what it also offers is something that audits sometimes miss, because an audit is one snapshot of a time, right? What is happening in the factory. That can never be the full picture, right? The grievance mechanism gives the possibility also to get insights and different time points to learn what happens and really learn from those who know best, which is the rights holders or the workers. I think for now these are the key learnings I want to share, because I also want to give you the chance to.
I think one really important point you mentioned is collaboration across the different stakeholders. I mean, as a brand, usually you don't invest that much time and that much energy in projects in lower supply chains. That's something that is quite unique, and also for Deuter, it was the first time we invested so much time into such a focused project. On the other hand, it gives you what we learned from that project and engaging with the suppliers on that level, including all those different stakeholders, is that after all, we're all talking to humans. We're talking to factories that are run by humans, that are people that are making our products, people that are making components for our products. They're there and they have real problems, and they want to address them, and we want to engage with them because we somehow feel responsible. And that's why it was fantastic to have that chance to do that project. It was also a great learning on how NGOs here in Germany, NGO over there in Vietnam, how the suppliers, how the management, how the workers, how they all go together in one project, how this communication is working, understanding how you can start building trust. And I mean, that's something you really need to learn as a brand as well, because usually you're the customer. You go to a supplier, you say, I want that and that product, I pay for that, and then you get it delivered and done. And you have a tier one, you have your normal like audits, and that's it. But that was a different project, a different learning. And also, I mean, to convince we also had to convince our CEO to implement a complaints system in our lower supply chains. And he said, what's going to happen if we receive hundreds of complaints? How are you going to handle that? And I said, I don't know. We'll see. I don't think we're going to get hundreds of complaints, because I hope we did our job right in the past years. And in the end of the day, we didn't get hundreds of complaints, but it could have happened. So there was a black box, and good learning that things are not as bad as you might think. But there's still, it was a blind spot, you know. We were jumping in the cold water, and that was made that project so how to say, so unique. That's for unique and fantastic.
Thanks so much. Can I share something on facts and figures maybe for the key learnings? Because I think what is also really important to mention is, once again, repetition, internal mechanism within the factory, and then our system as backup. But what we learned in the end line survey is that really over 90% responded of the workers who took the survey that they knew how to use Atlas, and also that they trusted it, that this would be handled anonymously. And so I think this is the base also for future cooperation. Yeah.
Future cooperation is a good keyword. What is next? So you have done a big step. What can we see next? Or what are you heading to next?
Yeah, so the official project with the Partnerships for Sustainable Textiles, it ran for 1.5 years and ended at the end of last year. So with the two brands who were part of this project, Deuter and Autoworks, we said, of course, now it's continued for 1 more year at least. And also we will do the survey there again to see also the long-term effectiveness, right? Because grievance mechanism, as I said, it's a cultural shift, it takes time. So I think this would also be really, really relevant results we get out there. I think also the partnership with CDI from your part, with the NGO on the ground, will be continued. Also, we with other brands and factories we work with, we also continue our collaboration and trainings and remediation with this NGO because it was really helpful and handy. And I think from our side, there's also some updates. We also continuously improve our tool and also go more into the space of also data sharing and also, a couple of ideas to improve what is happening based on the insights that we've learned within this project. Yeah.
Yeah, from my perspective, personally, I think that Atlat can be a solution for the industry. It is ready to scale up, and we will talk further to Fairer Foundation because they also want to extend their system further down the supply chain, and I think they can also learn from what we have learned, and there might be a good cooperation possible. Or I mean, the system is open to be used by other brands as well. So whenever somebody wants to reach out, we are happy to explain more in detail what the project is about. And Atlat will provide services around that. And let's see. I mean, future is bright.
I have 2 last questions. If you look back, is there anything you would do different?
That's a very good question. Let me think about it. I think we already talked about the learnings, and I think in the end, you're always smarter, right? But thinking about the pilot project, we didn't have a NGO training then. I think we should have started with that, with local contact points. And on the other hand side, also the optimizations that we did on the way, like the training documentation, have it from the get-go. I think this would be something that I would do differently now. And then, of course, I would also say a bit, we are so grateful to have had the funding from the Partnership of Sustainable Textiles, but what I wasn't aware of also the bureaucracy that comes with that. So I wouldn't do that differently, but this was also a surprising learning for me. Yeah.
Yeah, the bureaucracy you can't change anyway. You have to deal with it. We were also overwhelmed by GIZ and the bureaucracy that came with the project. It was almost 50% of the time was setting up the project, get it running, find the right NGO, and to get the funding. That is, but something we can't change. What would I do differently is actually nothing, because there was no learning before that, and you need to take steps, otherwise you can't learn. And to say later, okay, I should have done something differently, but if you don't know, you can't do it differently. You need to be open to explore, and only by doing that you can find out what can be better in the future, or what could be improved. And I mean, that's always like, if there are no traces, you need to do the first footsteps, and then leave the traces, and then look back and do it better. So in general, I would change nothing. No.
And if we are looking into our audience, what would you recommend them to take home? What would you like them to discuss with their teams? Or what kind of advice would you give them if they want to follow your trace or find their own way on it?
I think, first of all, for me, it's really a message that is dear to my heart. The so often word sustainability. It's not only about ecology, it's also about the social issues. It's also about the human beings, and it's also about workers, right? And I think this is the first message that I want people to take away. If you work in a space of sustainability, you should also think about that. Period. And secondly, I think, what do I want people to take away with them, right? If it's not impossible, right? I don't want to overpromise that we will engage your workers and nobody will complain anymore, or everything will work from the get-go. No, it won't. It's a process. And also a tool is just a guidance in this process, but it's manageable, it's doable. And if you want to engage with stakeholders, with workers, get in touch with us. We are the service provider, as we said, ATLAT, A-T-L-A-T. T stands for transformation, from complaints to compliance to compassion. And yeah, if you're here from a brand, reach out to us, and we're happy to talk. I think that's what I want people to take away with them.
Maybe from the brand perspective, and what I want to give you home is, these kind of projects are quite large and go beyond what usually is required by your customers or the public, or the, how you say, it's. That project went much further than it should have gone in the first place. But if you really dig into that and dive deep into your supply chain, you will have a much better understanding of your risks, but also of the people that are working in your supply chain and doing your products. Not just the final product, also the components. And that's really worth doing the effort and investing the money and the time.
And the risk management might be the key word for having a discussion with CEOs and sustainability teams and so on. Okay, so looking for the time, we have a few minutes. Is there any question from our audience right now to our panelists?
Don't be shy.
If there is not, Joshua is with us at the Sustainability Lounge in Hall C2 for tomorrow the whole day. And otherwise, you can reach out to Atlat as well as to Marco from Deuter. If questions coming up later, just take the chance to reach out to them. And said that, I would say thank you for your attention. Thanks for your time, and looking forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
Thank you as well for moderating.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
And please give me applause to our panelists.